It's rock and roll!
Welcome to the Look It's Rock and Roll podcast. I'm your host Julian Gill. Today, Lonnie's on the road, so hopefully he'll be able to join us shortly. But in the meantime, we've got Ken and Mark.
Hey.
Now, before we get into this week's episode, or this month's episode, as it seems to have become lately with everyone's schedules, be remiss not to mention the passing of Cinderella's guitarist, Jeff LaBar, and keyboardist Gary Corbett. News of his passing came today as well. He'd been battling cancer, sadly. And Gary was a fixture in Nashville for me at the Rock and Pod Expos that I attended, and I spent a lot of time on the phone with him, obviously talking Kiss, Cyndi Lauper, and some of the other bands that he worked with. Really, really nice guy with a lot of great stories, very honest. And Cinderella, of course, was my band in '86 when they came out, and I was bummed that they weren't opening for David Lee Roth at the time that I got to see him. Tesla was the opening act for them, but we watched that video and enjoyed that album so much back in '86 and '87, and I did an episode of Pods and Sods, a 6-pack of Cinderella, so check out that episode. I think we had some good picks that day and some good banter with BJ Cramp and Eric Miller, of course. So any quick thoughts on Cinderella or Gary Corbett, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad to see these guys, they're getting older, and like we all are, and the passing, it seems more frequent as the years go on, obviously, but yeah, it's sad that a member of a rock band or anybody dies early, at a younger age, and then with Corbett, I remember they had the donations for the fundraiser for his cancer to help with that, and boy, I was really surprised that it took him. I guess it really took over quickly, the cancer for him, unfortunately. But yeah, it's sad. He was with Kiss on the live tours there, Crazy Nights and so on. But yeah, it's sad to when any of these artists die young or die early.
Yep. I've still got a set of guitar picks from Gary from Kiss. He said, "Do you have a set?" I said, "No, I don't." And a few weeks later in the post shows up a set of brand new from his flicking supply of Hot in the Shade ones. Mark, thoughts? Any thoughts on those? You did come to Rock and Pod the first year, and he was there.
Yeah, he was a really, really nice guy, easy to talk to. Like you said, very honest about things, and great stories about stuff. And I also enjoyed some of the interview things that you've done with him, Julian. Good stuff. And it's a shame. I've said this a dozen times before, is that with COVID and everything that's going around, we went and got these things done, these injections for people to get inoculated. They were done in a year, and yet we're still being 20 years on with this cancer thing. It's about time we finally get something to knock cancer on its rear end, finally, because we keep losing people, and it's got to stop. I mean, come on, man, put your efforts into that a bit more now. Like, it's unbelievable. And Jeff LaBar, he died. It hasn't been confirmed how he died, but there are rumors circulating about what's going on and stuff like that. But he died way too young. He was a good guitar player. I really enjoyed those first two Cinderella albums immensely. They're in my catalog, in my vinyl collection there, and I listen to them quite frequently, especially Long Cold Winter. It's such a great album. I've always enjoyed that record, and things like that have to be looked at a little bit more seriously. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm harping on anything here, but it's no secret that he was a bit of a drinker, and those kind of things. You have to watch your friends, man. Sometimes if they're going down the wrong path, help a buddy out. I've had friends that helped me out in bad situations. I've been grateful for it. So, little bit of a, message out there. But I also want to say one quick thing before we go on. I just got told about half an hour ago that a tornado went through my sister's town of Barrie here in Ontario, an F2, and it completely blasted a big portion of her city that she lives in. So she's okay. I found out that they're okay. But my thoughts are with those people, and especially there's a guy that I talked to on a live stream named George. He lives in Collingwood, and I heard that there's bad weather going through there too. So my thoughts are with you too as well, George. Hopefully everybody up there in the northern part of Ontario are okay after that horrendous weather that we just had.
Yeah, and everyone everywhere. The big floods in Germany today with a lot of people who've drowned in these floods. It's a weird time. So there wasn't going to be a KissFAQ episode this week because we're doing this show, but in light of Gary's passing, I'm putting up the audio from the interview he did with me in 2017 for the Danger Zone book, since not everyone will have gotten the book or read the feature online, and it's edited down to exactly what he basically said in the interview in the book, just to make sure it stays all nice and neat. So if you want to hear him talk about his early life, getting into the keyboards and piano and early bands, down to writing She Bop with Cyndi Lauper, or for Cyndi Lauper, as the case may be, and of course touring with Kiss and Paul Stanley. We broke off at the end of the Crazy Nights tour and the Paul Stanley solo tour, and I think I spoke to him about Hot in the Shade and other things later at another Rockin' Pod in-person interview, and always on the phone with him. Back then, lots of phone calls. It was really, really fun. Let's get into today's album, which is a reader or a listener's pick, and we gave you guys a bunch of albums to choose from, and you chose Mark, Alice Cooper Band, Killer. I don't actually own a physical of this, so I've been on Spotify. Actually, I own the iTunes. Somewhat legit, but today I've been listening to a vinyl rip of it on YouTube just to get a little bit more realistic on it. So Alice Cooper, of course, needs no introduction. Like many artists, when we get to 50, 60 years into their careers, his career is one of many phases. I think we'd probably put this one as the second phase, because those first two albums, Easy Action and Pretty's for You or whatever it was, are really not quite Alice Cooper Band. They're prototypes. But by 70, the Easy Action transforming into Love It to Death, and then Killer comes on after that. So Killer was the album that Ken selected for listeners to vote for if they choose. So thank you everyone for your votes. Ken, what made you select Killer as your pick for people to evaluate?
Yeah, well, it's early. It's an early Alice album where the band, I think, is really finding their formula of music that they're trying to put across, and with it being its 50th year anniversary this year, I figured, hey, why not? And I love the album, and I'm sure there's some people out there that probably never heard it. There probably a lot of people have only heard, Welcome to My Nightmare, and maybe $1 Billion Babies and some of the even later stuff. So I thought, this was a really surprise for me when I got it. So, and it's a definite cool, rockin' album, and again, 50th anniversary. I think we should celebrate it.
Absolutely. When did you first get it?
I got it in the 70s. My first album was From the Inside. Alice Cooper's From the Inside album. That's when I started. Once I got that, I started working my way back and picking up albums. I probably picked up Welcome to My Nightmare next, and Billion Dollar Babies. I kind of was going backwards. And yeah, this is one of the albums that was definitely surprising. So it was probably around '79. I finally got that album.
Yeah, Mark, what about you? I mean, for me anyway, this was my first experience with the whole album. I've heard songs from it on greatest hits packages and all that, but I haven't spent an extended time with the album itself. What about you?
It's interesting because my sister, of course, who features quite a lot in this, uh, she had Welcome to My Nightmare, but I wasn't
Hmm.
aware of it because I never heard it when she played it. I knew she had it because I recognized the album cover. But the thing is, this album I got to pretty late. My entry point to Alice Cooper was Trash, and then
Oh,
the
yeah.
one after it, Hey Stupid, right?
Hmm.
That's where I kind of got in with Alice. I mean, I was aware of Alice before that, but that was actually like my really serious, like, okay, I'm starting to pay attention to Alice kind of thing. And I got this album maybe about a couple of years back, like 4 or 5 years back, and I really liked it. I mean, I can say quite frankly, knowing full well that Bob Ezrin has produced this, okay, uh, I like this record. I think Bob did a really really good job on this, and I think it helped that Jack Richardson, I think who's credited probably as executive producer, I think, on this, but he was also on Love It to Death. I
Yeah,
think
that
Jack
one
Richardson was on the
definitely.
one before it, and I didn't like that one as much. I think when Bob Ezrin was when they let the leash go on him and let him do what he wanted a bit more with Alice, I really like the sound of this record. It's very raw, very, it's got that great '70s rock sound to it, and I think, as Ken said, I think they were finding their feet or have found their feet by this point on this record. So I really like this record.
Yeah, so my first experience with Alice Cooper was Alice Cooper's greatest hits, which of course is just
Oh,
all this stuff with slightly different versions. The first album I bought new and kind of got into was all again '86. He's back, the man behind the mask, Constrictor. So I came in at the Kane Roberts and Kip Winger era of the band. Still love Freedom to this day. I'm probably one of the few. And when Hey Stupid and Trash came out, I checked out. I was like, that's trash and stupid trash at that. I couldn't stand it. I got back into him at the end of the century with Brutal Planet and Dragontown and stuck around for a little while through the eyes of Alice Cooper, and then along came
hmm.
a spider. And, since then, the only album I bought is Welcome to My Nightmare 2. So he's not a big part of my life. Probably in the past year, I've gone back and started at the beginning with all those albums, and I'm currently, the next one I'm due to get is Dada. So
Oh, Dada.
I've made it through the flush the fashion
Plus the
era
fashion.
and
Yeah.
Oh
zipper
boy.
catches skin and all that. But
Uh-huh.
I'm not a fan. I like the hits, so I'm a casual. If I went to a show and they played Under My Wheels and I'm 18, elected and all that, I'd be perfectly happy and not depressed if they didn't play Halo of Flies or stuff like a little bit deeper cuts that most Alice Cooper fans will notice. That said, spending a couple of weeks listening to this on a regular basis, I want to echo what Mark said. The production and the songwriting really just seems to be, they did an album in earlier '71, and released it, and then they write this, and boom. I mean, there's a lot of good quality on it. So it debuted at 83 on the Billboard Top 200s and eventually peaked at 21, surged up the chart in time for Christmas 1971, supported by the Under My Wheels single. Just as a point of reference, some of the other singles on the chart around that time included Black Dog, Zeppelin obviously, Iron Man, just for you, Mark, Roundabout,
Yes.
and Bang a
Oh,
Gong. So that was kind of the more niche material that it was competing with.
Yeah.
So we've kind of covered the early phases and our entry points into the Alice Cooper band. Before discussing the album, Do you have a favorite Alice Cooper album, Ken?
Okay, yeah, probably it's probably going to be Billion Dollar Babies, and I do like Flush to Fashion. Um, I mean, not Flush to Fashion. I mean, From the Inside. Sorry,
Mm.
there's another F album. I meant From the Inside, which I thought was really cool. So those are kind of my two favorite ones, but this is, pretty close right behind those.
Yeah, Mark, how about you?
Um, even though Trash and those are my entry points, are not my favorite by any stretch of the imagination. But the interesting thing is that I would say honestly that this one is probably my favorite, followed closely behind by Dragontown. I really like that record. I mean, when he came back in 2000, at that time, I think Eric Singer was with him still on drums at that time, and I remember there was some kind of a live video and he was drumming on it. And that show, was it a Brutal Planet maybe live? One of those two around that time.
Brutal Live was the album with Eric, I
Yeah,
believe.
that's
Oh,
it. Yeah,
Brutal Life.
and that I remember when I watched that, I was just like completely like taken in by it. It was so good. The stage show was so good, and I was completely committed back to Alice at that point when that came in. But I mean, if I go back to like 70s Alice, this is the record that's connected with me the most. I mean, Love It to Death is good. The record before it
That's Bob Ezrin tweaking his.
is Easy Action. Not really my favorite, but
No.
I think this is my favorite from the 70s era, with the band proper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alice Cooper band
Right.
versus Alice Cooper.
Correct.
What you say about Dragontown. Yeah, Disgraceland. I love that song, and Sugar Man. But if I'm going to pick a favorite Alice Cooper album, it's going to be Billion Dollar Babies by a mile, pound for pound. That is just one rock solid slab of hard rock, really good. I'm glad Lonnie made it home in time. We're just you're muted. So now Lonnie's got technical issues. We'll come
So he's
back.
still not with us.
Yeah. So he'll while he fiddles, we're just gonna continue on. So
$1
favorites.
Million Babies.
Yeah. And Lonnie, we'll catch up with you in a minute for your favorite Alice Cooper album and your entry point. Overall impression of Killer. Be it first listen or most recent as a whole. I mean, how do you kind of measure this album in terms of A, an Alice Cooper album, or B, as a hard rock album in general? Ken?
Yeah, as a rock and hard, or you can call it hard rock album, I was pleasantly surprised, and I was actually, some of it, the material on there is very shocking in a way. We'll talk about it. Halo of Flies, for instance, was just like wow, I can't believe what I just heard, kind of thing, after you hear it the first time. And then something like Dead Babies, which is definitely a shock rock. I mean, Alice Cooper was considered shock rock, right? And that just fit right into that. It's kind of shocking and sickening in a way, but it at the same time, it's cool. It's a really cool song. So anyway, I think it's just a great rockin' album.
Let's see if Lonnie's with us.
Hello.
Hey, he's with us.
Hey.
How about
All
that?
right. Yeah, so
Unbelievable, huh?
thank you for joining us. Let's do a quick catch up with you. Your entry point into Alice Cooper and what phase of his career you'd call your entry point, and your first Alice Cooper album.
Well, my entry point to Alice was, I was always aware of Alice, obviously. I think my entry point to Alice was the Dazed and Confused soundtrack. It had Schools Out and No More Mr. Nice Guy on it back in like 94, 95
Okay.
when I got those for the first time. And I knew those songs, obviously. And then he was coming to town with the Scorpions.
Mhm.
And a buddy of mine, his girlfriend worked at the amphitheater in town, and she used to be able to get us lawn tickets to shows like that. Not good seats, but she'd be like, if you guys want to go to certain shows, let me know. I can get you tickets. So we're like, yeah, I want to go to Alice Cooper. So me and some other guys, we decided, yeah, we're going to go to see Alice. So I bought, in prepper, and I still only had the Days Confused soundtrack. So I bought Alice Cooper's, it was called Classics. It came out in 95. That was my first introduction then. So I learned a lot. It had a lot of new stuff on. It had some of the newer stuff on it. And then it had some live versions of some of the older stuff on it. So I was pretty prepared when I walked into the show. I knew not every song he played that night, but a lot of the songs he played that night. And I was pretty impressed, actually. And I was definitely more into Alice than I was into the Scorpions. Alice actually opened the show, the Scorpions closed, but I was more into Alice, and it kind of jump-started my Alice Cooper fandom, and I went and got some more greatest hits, because that's just what you do. And then I didn't see him again until 2004. And again, I got free tickets to him somehow in 2004. He played at a little it's a little theater in St. Louis that holds about 2,000 people. And from there, my fandom took off, and I had to have every Alice Cooper record after I saw him in 2004. And I would just buy them until I had them all. And I love Alice. I mean, and I've stated on the shows in the past that he is maybe my second, maybe my third favorite of all time. I guess my third, because I do love Guns N' Roses. I'll have to put him third. But I absolutely love Alice. I love Killers. I got Killers, I'd have to say summer of 2004, maybe fall of 2004, right around in there, when I was just buying every Alice Cooper album I could possibly get my hands on. And I love the album. I was excited when Ken nominated it, and it's excited to talk it over with you guys.
Very cool. Okay, you're all caught up. Mark,
Yes.
do you remember what the question was?
Hello.
No.
Your overall impression of Killers, be it on the first or most recent listen.
Well, like I said earlier, I really like this. I mean, like I said, I find that Ezrin alone, working with this without Jack Richardson, much better. I really like the production job he did on this. I love the sound of this record. It has a really good edge to it. And one thing I found out very interesting about this record, that cover with the snake, right? I talked to my sister because I talked to her this week, and she was saying, what are you doing this week? And I said, I'm doing a podcast, and we're doing Alice Cooper Killer. And then she started laughing. She goes, oh, that record, I remember that. She said that back when it came out and she was in school, the older guys in school loved that record because of the snake. They thought it was so ultra cool, man, a snake on there. It's got to remember, it's 71, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the girls kind of were like, ew, like when they saw that kind of album cover, they weren't into it. And Alice Cooper was really like hip with the guys during this time period, apparently, she was telling me. And like those songs too, like the Dead Babies and stuff like that, she found that it really played to the male audience demographic, this record, of like a hell of a lot more than any female. My sister was a very oddball in that sense, that she had more guy friends than she had girlfriends. She listened to hard rock music and stuff like that, so she was really fit into that. It's very rare that a lot of her actual girlfriends like that kind of stuff. But I think the record was really good. I mean, if you think back to that time period and those other records that came out around that time, it's a pretty hard rocking record. It sounds good. I think Ezrin did a great job, and that's coming from me. You know how that is. I usually have nothing good to say about Bob, but I think that he did a really, really stellar job on this record. I don't think there's one song in here that I don't like.
Yeah, I wish I could say that. I think overall impressions on it is that it's incredibly solid. And what I find as someone who came in during hair metal Alice is that the original Alice Cooper band is just rock solid. Once they found their footing, the songwriting credits tell that it was the Alice Cooper band, that it was more than just about the front man, who hadn't quite taken that moniker yet, or ownership of it. So it seems to be very collaborative. It seems to be, kind of Iron Maidenish in the sense that you have the different songwriters providing different textures and a consistency between those textures. So when you get certain guys working together, you get a certain style of song, and it's enough to have every chapter be interesting and different. Now, there's one song I don't like on it, which, when you're talking about this amount of material and some pretty long songs as well. I say that's a pretty good batting record. So that's my overall impression of the album, is that the quality of the material, the mix of songwriters, the mix of instrumentation, and also Ezrin's production just marry together to be. It's like one of those 70s albums that I really think I would have to now go out if they did a deluxe edition, or who knows, maybe there is, and actually buy, because it does feel to be one of those seminal albums from the 70s. So, Ken, your overall impressions?
Oh, I think you already got me on that.
Did I? And then, see what Lonnie's late appearance does. It throws me
you
all
up,
out of
man.
whack.
Just threw everybody out of sorts.
That's all right. So why don't you get us started with your three favorites and tell us why they're your favorites on the album?
My three favorites on the album: Under My Wheels, obviously. It's such classic Alice Cooper. And usually when I listen to Under My Wheels, I don't listen to this version, but I listen to usually a live version, or again, so Lonnie, that there's a version on the Alice Cooper box set of him singing Under My Wheels with Axl Rose. That's usually my go-to version of Under My Wheels. Of course it is. So listening to this version the last couple of weeks, and hearing those horns on it, it's like, I said, I miss the horns. I haven't listened to this version in a long, long time. I love the horns on this song, and it's such a great Alice song. He plays it obviously every night. It's such a staple in the set. I back when ringtones were popular, my phone used to always ring to telephone is ringing. So, and no one would get it, you know what I mean, except for me. I would just laugh every time. So Under My Wheels, top three for sure. Desperado, I love Desperado. It's so, and it's like such a production listening to the song. And I guess the reason why I love it too is that it was one of the early on songs that I heard on a Greatest Hits, and I just wow, that's really good. I mean, Alice doesn't get the credit, and much like other bands we talk about, doesn't get the credit for some of the songwriting. They're just, it's just Alice Cooper, it's a stage act, it's this, that. I mean, these are great songs, and you guys probably already talked about this a little bit before I got on. I mean, some of these songs are just masterpieces, and I put Desperado in that category. Just from Alice's lower voice, and then it changes, and then it's back, and it's so great. And then it's tough to pick a third. I had a lot of coffee driving here, you guys can probably tell. It's either Be My Lover or Dead Babies, and I gotta give a slight edge to Be My Lover, just because it is such a great Alice staple, and such a great song too. I mean, I think you can listen to Be My Lover, and I think a lot of people can relate to a song like that, or being in a situation like Be My Lover described. So Under My Wheels, Desperado, Be My Lover, my top three.
Nice. A-side. What was that theater in St. Louis that you mentioned? Is that the Ambassador?
The pageant on Del Mar.
Okay.
I've seen a lot. I saw this. Gene played there back in, I don't know, 17, 18, whatever.
What, 18, 17?
18, 17 or 18, something around there. I've seen a lot of great bands there. So.
Nice. All right, Ken. Now I'm back on track. We're in the right order. What are your three favorites on this album, and why?
Yeah, it's really difficult, but I am gonna go with. It is difficult. Halo of Flies is one, and just because, and supposedly, the rumor goes is that they were it was kind of Alice Cooper's the band's um, effort to write a song like King Crimson, to say, hey, we can do it too, kind of epic kind of song, just because of all the changes in there and so on, and throwing in something like a Sound of Music, little, what's that song? My Favorite Things. That song from The Sound of Music, and throwing that little in there. It's like, hey, I know that, it's just kind of ingenious what they did with that song, and the changes in it are just so cool. So that's one. I have to agree with Lonnie on Desperado. Supposedly, again, that song is so cool. I guess it was kind of a tribute to Jim Morrison. In a way, I guess the way he sings it at the beginning and the lower voice, it has a Jim Morrison kind of feel to it from the Doors. But the song is actually about watching was it The Magnificent Seven, and there was that one actor, Robert Vaughn, in that. Robert Vaughn, you may know from The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the original series way back. It was writing it from that standpoint about that character in that movie. So, and that's just a cool song. Some of the stuff about you're a notch and I'm a legend, and about the stiff barrel, you're going to be as stiff as my gun's barrel kind of thing. Those kind of lyrics are just fantastic. And then the other one would go, I would say Dead Babies. Just it's creepy and cool at the same time.
It's classic Alice.
It's just like, and then with like a procession kind of thing comes after it, like you can see a funeral procession, and the music that comes on in part of the song, and even the next song actually. So yeah, those are really, really cool songs. And again, there's a couple other ones I could have picked too, definitely.
Yeah, so while we're talking about Alice Cooper, I don't want to. There's this website that's been around for a long time because I've been going there for a long time. Sick Things UK. They are my Alice Cooper resource for reading up about these albums and some of the minutiae that goes with the album covers and all of that. But you totally called out the stuff in Halo of Flies that I was going to mention. The Sound of Music, little Favorite Things, Melody, Echo, but you missed something that really grabbed my attention on Halo Flies, and which is why it's one of my three favorite picks: the galloping bass in there.
Yeah.
I just immediately saw Steve Harris appear in my head with some of that bass work, and I can kind of figure where some of his inspirations go. And then reading about it and how they wanted to challenge themselves with the King Crimson-ish kind of approach to a song was really cool. So that was one of my favorite songs. One of my favorite things on this album. I refused to pick either of the singles because I wanted to force myself not to have something from the greatest hits, and really kind of experience more of the album. Desperado, without a doubt. I think Jim Morrison could easily be seen as a bit of a gunslinger figure, even though it's coming from a vocal point of view, and the movie, that you mentioned. The Magnificent Seven, magnificent movie, but Jim Morrison was an outlaw. So it all kind of comes together and works, even if it's not about Jim. The vocalization and the fact that he died earlier in the year kind of comes together. Now, whether it is, obviously reading on Sick Things about the song, it doesn't matter. I love the song. And then, of course, the title track is my third pick. And I couldn't go with Dead Babies, though. It's so damn catchy. It's sickeningly catchy, but there's one lyric I just can't stand in that, and the shelf,
Babies can't take things off the shelf.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem to work for me, and it's like a big fingernail scratch on a chalkboard in the middle of a fantastic song otherwise. But I'm sitting there nodding my head, starting to sing along to that chorus. I'm like, what are you doing?
What's wrong with you, man?
That's completely inappropriate. Shocking. but very catchy. And that's, I think, is another element on this album, is that so many of these songs, while they're kind of dark, depraved, are catchy, and it's the sort of thing that Ghost does nowadays. So it was all done 50 years ago, a little bit better, for that matter. Mark, your favorites?
Well, I have to say that I pretty much echo Lonnie in the sense that Under My Wheels are is a classic to me. I mean, I've always loved that song, like that whole cowbell thing at the beginning, telephone, and with that. I mean, come on, that whole thing is such a catchy thing from the very beginning. I mean, you can't help but be instantly hooked on it. And I remember every time I've seen Alice live, like even when he toured with what was it? I think it was with Heaven and Hell. They were the middle act. I was there too. It was Queensryche. I think it was Queensryche, Alice Cooper, and Heaven and Hell. Yeah, and fantastic. I mean, just absolutely brilliant show. How they ended with Elected, and all the people came on stage with the post banners and everything. It was fantastic, like great stuff. So, and they played a really great version of that on that show. I was like right into it. I was all standing up, going nuts, And next song, Desperado. I love that song as well. It's such a great song. I mean, the thing I have to give credit to Ezrin for is that I think he really found a way to capture the strong melodies, yet keep the music really cool and hard rock. You know what I mean? Sometimes when you try to overemphasize a melody too much, you can go down the poppy side of music a little too much. Whereas he didn't do that with Alice. He really made it still kind of cool and the guys were digging it kind of music. So I really think that he did a great job with that. But my third pick, though, I have to go with Dead Babies. I love that song. I've always loved that song. Even though the lyrics are a little, difficult to swallow in some parts. I mean, could you imagine in '71 hearing that? That must have been like, whoa, what the hell is this guy doing? But I really think it's a great song. And those three are easily probably some of my favorites from the whole Alice Cooper catalog, to be honest.
That was nice, Lonnie, with his little yeah. I now I even caught the reference. So, and Miracle of Miracles, twice in one show. Mark has said positive things about Bob Ezrin. So anyone who thinks that him not liking Destroyer is unbalanced, you're hearing the other side of the coin here. You're hearing an objective person's opinion. How about that? All right, before we go into, trying to pick, I did ask you to try and pick 3 least favorite tracks, but that's just not going to happen for anyone. So before we get to least favorite picks, let's talk about the Under My Wheels and Be My Lover as the album single. I mean, for me, those are both perfect selections because they're essentially pretty safe. You're not going to throw Dead Babies on AM radio and, get very far. With that edit's going to take it down to about 10 seconds. So regardless of it being ironic or, otherwise than it suggests, you're not going to do it. Under My Wheels and Be My Lover, track 1 and 2 off the album. What a 1-2 punch of awesomeness. Ken, straight back to you for singles. And would you have picked anything else?
I don't know. I could have picked anything else. Impossible. Yeah, other stuff is a little bit too much. I mean, maybe Desperado, but that's still, I don't know if that would make it. But I think Under My Wheels and Be My Lover, two catchy songs. Under My Wheels, I think it was another thing about Lonnie was talking about the horns, and that was a lot of bands back then around that time were using horns. In their music, and
the Stones and stuff like that.
Stones, Chicago, and so on. Rare Earth, I think.
Aerosmith.
So it was a thing at the time, and I thought it was a good, a little cool thing they did that with it. And you think about horns, car horns too. It kind of goes with the whole theme, I guess. So that. I think it was a great pick, obviously. And then Be My Lover is just a nice, cool, catchy song. And nothing wrong with that. I think it's an obvious choice, really. Other than the other ones, I don't know. I mean, again, maybe Desperado could have made it. And that would be probably it for a single. Otherwise.
Yeah, I love the point you make about the horns, that it was a very early 70s thing, and a lot of rock
Yeah.
bands were utilizing it. One thing, the complete tangent is, again, going to Peter Criss's 2017 show when he put Strutter to horn arrangement, in a similar
Right.
way to the early 70s, kind of echoed back to the Alice Cooper band and some of the things that those bands were doing. And it really does add an element or a texture to just standard rock music to
Lay
take
down,
it from
lay down.
the special to the spectacular. Lonnie, your thoughts on the singles?
Oh, I think that the perfect singles off the album. I mean, they're of the only 8 songs on the album, they're the 2 most radio friendly songs. I mean, I don't really know where else you could go as far as singles. Like Ken said, I could see maybe Desperado because it is catchy in a way, and it is it's a masterpiece in my opinion. But as far as, you got to think about AM radio in 1971, I really don't think you can go wrong with these 2 singles. I think it was tailor made to be for these 2 songs to be the 2 singles off the album. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think you can make Killer is way too long. Halo Flies is way too long. Even Dead Babies is too long of a song to put on as a single at close to 6 minutes. So, I mean, they're short. Both of the songs are short. They're sweet. They're catchy. They're tailor made to be singles. So I have no problem with it at all.
Mark.
Yeah, I think they were good selections for sure. The thing I find very interesting about it, because I'm looking back here on the album here, is that Bob Ezrin only has 2 writing credits on this record, and that's for Under My Wheels, and it's also, he has a writing credit for You Drive Me Nervous, and that's actually what I'm surprised about, is that they didn't pick that one as the second single, knowing how Ezrin likes to be involved in these kind of singles that could put out. So I almost
in there.
Well, no. I mean, I am a little surprised at that, because he usually likes to put in his kind of touch to songs like that, and his track record is pretty good in that sense, right? With songs that he has input on for getting decent chart play, right? But I think that they were perfect, and they I think you're right. Whoever said that they were strategically placed as singles, they're even placed on the album that way. Song 1, song 2. You're going to start off with your strongest songs right at the top. You caught them, you've hooked them and caught them, and now they're yours for the rest of the record. So I think they were perfectly written and perfectly produced, and they are the best 2 songs for singles.
Yeah, I completely concur. And the B-side selection on it says it all. Under My Wheels backed with Desperado. There, flip it over, if that's the case. And radio stations were more likely to do that back in the day. And Be My Lover had Yeah, Yeah, Yeah on the flip in the U.S. anyway. It may vary elsewhere. So I don't see there being any other options. I think those B-sides could easily have just been to, gamble on maybe them getting flipped over. So great selection. They were churning out so much material. If you think that they did 5 studio albums in 3 years, that's just a level of of work and creativity that bands today really lost the thread of, because they make so much of their money on the road, that they don't write now continuously. Very, very few really seem to do that. So let's go to least favorites on the album. And Ken, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to really pick a least favorite, but or 2. But I'll pick 2. I'll go ahead and pick 2. My least favorite are You Drive Me Nervous and Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. They're great, just straight ahead rocking songs. You Drive Me Nervous sounds like something that could have been left off of the prior album. It sounds more like that, to me at least, of the music that was on Love It to Death. But yeah, they're not bad songs. They don't stand up to the rest of the songs on the album. So.
Interesting. I wasn't able to get to 2. Lonnie, how about you?
I was not able to get to 2.
Were you able to get to 1?
I was hoping we would just skip this segment entirely, actually, or,
Yeah.
or I was hoping maybe you guys would do this segment before I showed up, and maybe I wouldn't have to participate.
You could decline to participate.
I might, and this might be the first time anyone on this show has ever declined to participate. I mean, even with Velvet Revolver, I picked a couple songs I didn't like on that album, but I don't know. I mean, I think I'd be doing a disservice to any songs on the album to do that. And if we ever do $1 Billion Babies, I think I'd do the same thing again.
Yeah, and it is a valid option to say, hey, I'm not picking. I
don't think I can.
I simply don't want to pick one. And we may berate you, but we'll never.
And that's fine. It's we do that every Thursday.
We'll never hang up on you.
Yes.
Mark, how about you? You gonna give a gander at giving one the boot?
It's very hard, but I'm gonna pick just one that I think I could maybe get the boot. I mean, it's not because it's not a good song, but I just think that as far as quality of songwriting and as far as strength of melodies and stuff like that, I think the least impressive one to me, and where they always kind of lose me a little bit, and Ezrin was smart, he strategically placed this song in the best position for something like that, is the very end of the record, Killer. I think that song is one of the songs that they kind of lose me a little bit at the end. And it's funny because I almost got a moment of Black Diamond in there when they start doing that slowing down of the music. I was like, it just all of a sudden I started thinking Black Diamond all of a sudden when I heard that, but it's just that song I think is the one where if I find myself maybe thinking about something else and maybe drifting off and not paying full attention to the record, it's on that song. Always, I find, never anywhere else in the record. I mean, I'm always, hooked and engaged with the rest of it. So it's not a bad song, and not saying that it's, anything terrible. But if I had to pick one, I guess that would be that one for that reason.
Okay, well, I was only able to pick one, and it's a song that I think that really needs to have an Ezrin co-write credit added to it to fix it, and that's Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. It just doesn't quite meet the standard of everything else, and almost comes across to my taste as a little bit of a throwaway. So I think if Ezrin had sprinkled some of his pixie dust on it, he could have, kicked it up a notch and not had me thinking of the Beatles with its title. Again, it's not terrible. I haven't skipped a song on this album. I've just left it on repeat. And then I've mixed it in with Love It to Death and $1 Billion Babies afterwards, and just played it in every permutation to get the album before, the album after, and there's nothing skippable. So I'd almost side with Lonnie, even with that kind of stretch to name one, and say that it's not a bad album. I don't think that anything really does get to that level, but that is one that certainly could have used a little bit of additional magic. Let's talk about one of the guest players. This is an Ezrin album. Who comes in, who plays additional guitar and Under My Wheels and Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. Rick Derringer, or Zeringer. Wow. Yep. I did not know that. So that really is a little bit surprising. But then again, Ezrin and the band, and just like with other bands that he used substitutes on, knew that it was the right choice to make for the material and weren't bothered by it. And again, reading on Sick Things, some of the notes on that they liked it. So get the right tool for the right task. I think we've already covered the production by Bob Ezrin on this, unless any of you have any additional thoughts on the production, particularly in comparison to the predecessor, Love It to Death, and the album that follows after. It seems to be band and producer in perfect synchronicity for me, but we've kind of already gone over that. Thoughts on the cover and the packaging? Now, Mark, you flashed the gatefold, didn't you? At the beginning. Yeah. So
I got two here.
The stories, right, of the handwriting, trying to write like a demented, killer by using his left hand, and reading the story about the getting the photograph of the snake, whole sheet of film, and they managed to find one picture with that tongue out. Really cool stuff. But Lonnie, what do you think of the packaging and the album cover itself? Any thoughts?
it's great. It's genius actually. You know, the writing with the left hand and that, and it's totally in the Alice Cooper vein. It just pushes it to the next level. Actually, the way they did that, just to get into the brain of, you know, of a psychotic person. So I think it's great. You know, I love the snake with the tongue on it, and that's so, you got to think about 1971. That's really kind of risque almost in 1971. You know, a serpent with its tongue out on the album cover. I mean, that's really that's shock rock right there, just for that cover. Now, somebody looks at that today and they just flip right through it. Somebody wouldn't even think anything of it. But I mean, you're coming out of the '60s with the Beatles, and then all of a sudden it's Alice Cooper and a snake on the cover. I mean, it's pretty hardcore for 1971. I love it.
Love it to death, huh?
There you go.
Lonnie, I mean, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, it's a definitely cool cover. The calendar thing is a nice touch. Of course, you can only use it 1 year.
Well, every few years, actually.
Who knows what tomorrow?
True. You're perfect. But you know, at the time, just like we talked about the horns, there was that was kind of the thing they were doing. I have a Rod Stewart one around the same period of time. I think it's Every Picture Sells, or earlier one. But it has kind of like a poster thing in there where it folds out kind of the same way as the Alice Cooper one, where you can take it off on the preparation and tack it to your wall kind of thing. But I was going to show something. So this thing here, this was it's a repress, but it was for Rocktober kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with this one, this is actually a misprint because I got it, and this is for Killer. The problem with this, if I put the needle on it, it plays Easy Action, the Easy Action album.
Yeah.
It has the Killer labeled, but it has Easy Action. Now, I have Easy Action that came out at the same time on a different color, and it has Killer.
Yeah.
So
they screwed it up.
Yeah, they blew it. But so I ended up getting both. But I mean, how could you make a mistake? But I mean, that's a cool kind of pressing. But yeah, the album cover, the snake, and the whole thing. It fits, and Alice Cooper's known for the snake and so on. So it's a nice, cool touch. I think I saw something about, and maybe I'm not remembering, but there was something about how they did that photo shoot. But
yeah, that's up on Sick Things. Nice detail about trying to get the picture snapped with this with the tongue out, rather than you couldn't take the photo of the snake with its tongue out, because by the time you clicked, the tongue had gone back in. So you had to kind of pre-anticipate, how many shots were taken just to get that single one ended up being the cover. Mark, your thought on the packaging?
Actually, the one thing about this album cover that I find fantastic, I mean, besides the fact that there's like a cool snake on it and the lettering and all that's on there, the one thing that I find interesting even to this day is that the choice of the color that they used for the background of it, this kind of reddish pink, it really, really stands out in a record store. I noticed. If you go and walking around the record stores and it's on a shelf there, you can't help but have your eye kind of go to it, because that shade of that color instantly kind of pulls you over to it. It's like when Lonnie comes on screen, his orange and black there, right away, I find it extremely catchy to the eye. You know what I mean? It's like a similar effect with this. You know what I mean? And I think it's a great idea because, obviously you want people to buy your album. So why not give it that extra little, push to it or help that it could get in order to get people's attention to it? Because I think once you're lured to it and you see the snake right away, you're going to be like, shit, what the hell is that? And and you start looking through it, and you'll probably 9 times out of 10 you'll probably take a chance and buy it. I think in the 70s people were much more into just going out and buying records than rather saying I'm just going to wait for the single. I think people went and bought stuff on a whim a bit more. And I would have definitely went and grabbed that.
Yeah, that is everything I could think to say. Well, I didn't think to say it, but it was one of those things when flipping through records that it's grabbed my attention on many occasions. It really is a vividly and distinctive cover. So, Mark, great observation on that. My final points on this: the tour kicked off in December 1971, and "You Drive Me Nervous," "Dead Babies," "Killer," "Yeah Yeah Yeah," "Halo of Flies," and "Under My Wheels" were all performed from the album, which is pretty impressive slab to be adding to a set that was already impressive. Are there any final points that you'd like to add about this album or Alice Cooper in general, Ken?
If you haven't listened to it, definitely give it a chance and try it out. It's pretty much a consensus here that it's a pretty good hard rocking album and one of Alice's better ones in his catalog. So yeah, I stand by what I said, that it's a really good album. So yeah, do it, pick it up, try it. I think you'll like it.
Yeah, and you can listen to it for free on Spotify or YouTube, and then if you like it, you can go out and
There you
buy it
go.
and support the artist, or the artists, whoever owns the publishing and all that these days. Mark, any final points or thoughts on the album?
Yeah, I mean, my final point on it is the band itself, I think, is really, really good. I mean, I think the guitar players in this band are fantastic, and Alice Cooper has always had strong guitar players. That's one thing I'm going to make a point of saying here, is that if you go back and look through his albums, he's never had weak guitar players in his band, ever. I mean, Kane Roberts was great. He had all kinds of great, even the people that are in the band now. I mean, there's some really fantastic YouTube videos that Premier Guitar did when Alice was on tour. And they got, they round up some of the guitar players that were in his band, and they went through all his gear. And one guy was like a Gibson guitar lover, so he had all these Gibson guitars that he's out on tour with. Like, they're guys that he takes with him, know these songs inside and out. They're very respectful of the original kind of tones that they used, Marshalls and Gibsons and stuff like that. And it's if you love that kind of style of rock, like guitar-driven rock, two guitars, double lead stuff here and there, Alice Cooper is definitely a good artist to pick up on and buy. That's for sure. And this record definitely is a great example of that playing.
Yeah, guitars. Nina Strauss.
Yeah,
Wasn't Ryan Roxy one as what?
Yeah.
Those are some.
Chuck Eric that's been in his band for years. It's just fantastic.
And some pretty good drummers as well. So he surrounds himself with good musicians. So I wasn't looking forward to this episode. I'm not that big of an Alice Cooper fan, but I'm really glad that I was. Again, that's the whole object of this exercise, is to make us explore music that we maybe have not explored previously, or to revisit stuff that isn't as fresh and familiar to us. So, complete win for me. I'm thrilled that I've enjoyed it, and it's forced me to go to more of the catalog and see what I'm missing. I've enjoyed this far more than ELO. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
That
was the early
up to this point.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is,
yeah.
And obviously time I enjoyed a lot. So don't get me wrong, but I'm starting at the beginning. Lonnie, your final thoughts on it?
He's going to be out on tour this fall. If you have a chance, go see him live. He's absolutely fantastic live, and I mean, that's how I got hooked on him, was by seeing a live show. I was just couldn't get enough of it afterwards, and I've seen him basically every time he's come to town since then. I've seen him a bunch. And on a side note, my wife tolerates Kiss, and she likes Guns N' Roses, but she's really happy this week is over because she hates Alice Cooper.
Does she? Oh, you know what? I think we're going to have to give Becky a pick one of these days. That just, have maybe ask Mark's sister to pick. Ask your suffering wife to pick. It could actually be, but it has to be suitable for the show. No Backstreet Boys, no NSYNC.
Right. No Taylor. We're not going to review a Taylor Swift album.
Yeah. So, all right, there we go. Thank you, everyone, for voting and for your suggestions. We will do another readers pick down the road. I think we have our next one actually queued up. I can't remember where we are these days because so busy. But for now, from Ken, from Lonnie, Mark, and myself, thanks for listening, and we shall see you next time. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, like us, or even leave us a review. You can find us and join the conversation on Facebook.